According to Guinness World Records, the video game that currently holds the title for the most playable characters in a video game is Fire Pro Wrestling Returns for the PS2, which has a whopping 327 playable characters. Although, I'm not certain how accurate this is, since there are other records for higher numbers like for Brave Frontier, which has over 600. Plus, there are plenty of games where you can add in your own characters, which can technically have an infinite number added to them. But that number, 327, it felt just within grasp. I wanted to surpass it. It felt so close, yet so far. At the time of recording, my game, Solace Inc, now has a little over 300 playable characters. My original plan was to keep adding characters until I hit 330, but once I hit the 300 mark, I just stopped. I didn't really have it in me to add any more. Fire Pro Wrestling Returns has been my white whale, and the drive to overcome it continues to haunt me. But I got pretty close, and I'm content with that for now. Over 300 characters in itself is quite an achievement. But why does Solace Inc have so many characters? Who are they, and where did they come from? What even is this game? That's what I'd like to discuss today, along with what's new in the 1.9 update for Solace Inc. Hello, it's me, Apal again. Sorry I haven't been uploading as many videos recently. I've been busy with IRL stuff, as well as focusing on actually working on making games. As much as I appreciate the newfound attention I've received over the past few months, I don't want it to get to my head and want to focus on making better products or working on new stuff. As I was working on this update, it kinda dawned on me that I never really made a proper devlog for Solace Inc, and wanted to give some background as to what this game is and how it was made, as well as what's new. The 1.9 update contains a pretty decent amount of new content, primarily new characters as well as a few gameplay changes. If you're already familiar with Solace Inc and just want to see the new stuff, feel free to skip to later in the video. With that said, let's jump right into it. If you haven't played this game, Solace Inc is a survivors-like where you play as a group of spatio-temporal mercenaries, which are time travelers that specialize in combat, and will do pretty much anything you pay them for. This game is actually a spin-off of another roguelike I made called Project Malice. It takes the characters and settings from that game and expands on the universe and lore. All of my games take place in the same interconnected universe, and typically will feature characters from games I've made in the past, or hell, even games I haven't made yet. You generally don't need to play any of the previous entries to understand the story or timeline of events of my games, but I think it is pretty cool to be like, hey, wait a minute, I've seen that character before. I wonder what they're doing here. The gameplay of Solace Inc is essentially Vampire Survivors, except all of the weapons or items are individual characters that follow you around and fight for you. Each character has an active, which is an ability that can range from a simple melee attack to an AoE effect that affects nearby allies or foes, and a passive which applies globally to all recruits like increased damage or max health. You can upgrade recruits to make them more powerful or summon new ones by collecting gems that drop from enemies. Slaying enemies also increases your quota, which once passed allows you to leave and complete the mission whenever you're ready. A majority of the missions are pretty straightforward. You fight off endless waves of enemies and will occasionally fight off mini-bosses, but some of the later missions can get a little unique. For example, you can go shopping, or you can go kart racing, or you can play golf, or you can go gambling, or play Legally Distinct Inscription, or Legally Distinct Plants vs. Zombies, and so forth. As I was working on this, I kinda got a little bit bored of the standard Survivors-like gameplay, so I decided to expand into other ideas just to spice things up. There's a few other mechanics and systems that help it stand out from the standard gameplay as well. During a mission, you might gain a synergy if you recruit specific characters, which are additional passive effects you can gain by recruiting characters with similar traits, like being from the same game, or being the same species, or they just know each other. Earlier this year, I also added dissonances, which are sort of like anti-synergies where recruit infighting can occur. It helps to know which characters have ops so you know who and who not to recruit. There's also a fusion system, where if you have Jordan's sister Sarah on your team, you can fuse two characters together to make one super powerful character. For example, if you fuse Carissa and Aqua together, you get Aquissa, which combines Carissa's high damage and Aqua's high rate of fire. Fusions are important since not only are they incredibly powerful, but they also free up an extra slot for another recruit. On the main menu, you can view the Missions tab, where you can see all of the missions as well as information about them. The Directory tab, which contains information about all the recruits, synergies, and enemies you might encounter, and the Research tab, which lets you upgrade all of your recruits permanently, as well as unlocking new game modes and unlocking cameo crates. There's also the break room, which has some extra dialogue scenes between some of the characters, and on the PC version, you can make your own custom recruits in the Interns tab, which you can also upload to the Steam Workshop. I think one of the things that makes this game stand out is the copious amount of characters you can play as. A lot of these characters are either characters from my previous games or completely original characters I made for this game. I kind of have a problem when it comes to making original characters. I sometimes just come up with random character ideas and will make drawings of them, but won't use them for anything, which Solace Inc definitely helps out with. This game makes it really easy to prototype character ideas and give them a practical use instead of just having them collect dust in my art folder. The reason this game has so many characters is because I had a relatively simple workflow towards implementing new characters, so I was able to mass produce them and churn them out easily. Each character only has one sprite, typically a 64x64 6-frame walking animation, which I made a template for when I first started working on the game. Once I make the walking animation sprite, I just create a new recruit object, give them an active and a passive effect, add their info to the recruit info script, and then add them to the recruit list, and then I test them to make sure that they work. That's pretty much it. There's also a lot of cameo recruits in this game, which are characters made by other people or are from other games by people I know. It's sort of an excuse for me to make fan art of other people's characters while also promoting them to others. Sometimes I see a character and be like, I want to add them to my game. So I'll ask the creator or owner if I can do that, and surprisingly, pretty much everyone has said yes. There's also a few from people who have asked me to add their characters to the game, and I like their designs enough to do it. I really like how varied the roster is. When you're opening up the cameo crates, it's like, some random person's OC, some random person's OC. Oh damn, Turnip Boy from Turnip Boy commits tax evasion? Some random person's OC. What? Young Venus from Nuclear Throne? Granddad? Also, yes, this game does have 18+ DLC. It's completely optional and doesn't really add anything major to the game aside from alternate appearances for certain characters, some bonus animations, and some extra dialogue. You're not really missing out on much, and like most of my adult content, I only added it because I kind of felt like it. All cameos are disabled while you have 18+ content enabled, just to be safe. I think one of the biggest criticisms I've had towards this game is how horny it is. The break room dialogue in this game used to be a lot less tame, and there were a few people uncomfortable with it, which was honestly a valid criticism towards the game. I put out a VivziePop update after it came out, which rewrote a lot of the older dialogue that was unnecessarily lewd. The vision I had for Solace Inc changed while I was working on it, and I felt like making the dialogue more tame was a necessary change to match the overall vibe. It's still pretty horny, to be honest. I mean, half the characters have huge jiggly badonkers, but at least it's more digestible and less cringy. Solace Inc has been one of those games where it's really easy to keep adding stuff onto it. I started working on it in August 2023-ish, and I'm still adding more content over 2 years later. I really liked working on this game, and like I said in my tier list video, it's one of my better ones. Speaking of new content, what's new in version 1.9? My main focus for this update was to just add a bunch of characters to get over the 300 milestone, but I have added a few other things as well as some overall gameplay changes. Let's start off with the new characters. First, I added a bunch of characters from one of my older games, Buckler 2. Man, I haven't touched that game in like 6 or 7 years now, so it was nice to revisit some older characters and to breathe some new life into them. The notable characters from this batch are the 7 Guardians, which are the humanoid-ish forms of the main bosses from that game. They're pretty powerful and have roughly the same power as a fusion. Next, I added a few characters from some of my smaller games I released earlier this year, like Fearmonger, Job Hunt, and more. For Janice from Job Hunt, I decided to give Jasmine's current active and passives to her, and reworked Jasmine into a more general purpose character like Jordan. Next, I added some more characters from Aestheta, aka the Clash Royale Gunderslov game. I added Joe, Ophelia, and Lucifer to the game earlier this year, and decided to finish off the roster of the playable decks as well as a few extra ones. I also added in a few new characters like Buffy's coworkers from Mothbugs. Like I mentioned earlier, sometimes I just come up with random character ideas and will add them to this game as a way to flesh out the characters or expand on the lore of existing ones. Technically, Gelato is a new character as well, She was previously Taffy's alt, but I decided to separate the two, so now she's a separate Candy World mascot. To add on to the characters I'm prototyping, I added in a group of characters from a game I can't really talk about yet because not only is it related to something that's a bit secret, but it's also related to a game idea that I haven't started working on yet, but am considering making. I wanted to add them to Solace Inc as sort of a teaser for that game if I ever end up making it, or as another group of characters that expands onto the universe in case I don't. Now, this group of characters functions a bit differently from the rest. They have a burst ability instead of a passive, which fills up when they attack and acts like a second active that triggers under certain circumstances. For example, Spots' burst will fire poison projectiles in all directions when enemies get too close. I won't go too much into their lore, but I am adding new break room dialogue that explains who they are and what their deal is. Next, I've added some new cameo recruits. Most of these are OCs from people that I know, but I think a few people might recognize this one. Lastly, I've also added in a few fusion recruits, as well as some new troops for the Chronocore mode. In addition to the new recruits, I have also made some changes to some of the alternates that currently exist. Notably, Sarah's ult now has the fusion gun, since I don't think anybody was really using her previous active, and now just swaps out her passive. The next major change I've made to the game is elemental types. Each recruit will now have an element assigned to them, which can be fire, water, earth, air, metal, light, love, cosmic, and null. Each element is weak to one or more other elements, and has a unique effect such as fire types not taking damage from burning. Each mission also has an element type which can be applied to all of the enemies in the mission, and when selecting a recruit it will show if they are weak or strong. There's a few passives that increase damage from elemental weaknesses, so you can use that to your advantage. Another major change I've made is with the difficulty system, as well as adding in a battle power stat. I've recently been playing a few mobile games that have some variant of a combat power stat, which is a representative of a total effectiveness of a unit, and I kinda thought it would be cool to implement something like that for Solace Inc. Instead of difficulty being an arbitrary value, you now have a statistic you can use to judge how effective your units are when fighting against enemies. During missions, there is now a recruit battle power stat and an enemy battle power stat on the top left corner, which is an average of all the relevant units that currently exist. Mission difficulty has now been reworked so that it scales with however many recruits you have unlocked, instead of just going up by each mission. The difficulty will be capped for missions you haven't beaten yet, so for example on week 1 it's capped out around 30, and if you have 50 recruits unlocked, it'll still count if you only had 30. Once you beat that mission though, it becomes a lot more difficult unless you upgrade health or damage in the research tab. In the research tab, certain values now scale with how many recruits you have unlocked as well, so if you already have a ton of credits, you now have something you can spend it on. Hopefully that all makes sense. I made these changes so that progression is more tied to how many recruits you have unlocked, which means that the more characters you have unlocked, the harder the game gets. I might make a few tweaks to this though, so it is subject to change. I've also made a few changes to Chronocore mode. Not only has it received a few buffs such as increased base max energy, and every troop being playable, but you can now capture certain enemies and use them as troops. On the upgrade screen you'll see this Pokeball looking thing called a Chronosphere, which you can throw at an enemy to capture it. So if you wanted to play as a Mycrawly, or a Sneaky Golem, or a Dami Mommy Necromancer Lady, you can now do so. In addition to this, I've also added in a definitely totally not an Eevee. That's legally distinct, totally different character. Please don't kill me, Nintendo. They will appear as a mini-boss, which will run away from you, and if you capture it and summon it, they will evolve into a random elemental evolution of it. Some of the designs are actually based off of Fakemon evolutions I found. Since there isn't a flying type or an earth type, I figured I'd just make it myself. I suppose doing something that a large game studio won't do themselves has kinda become a part of my brand at this point. The last major thing I wanted to cover are imposter recruits, which are new enemies that will appear randomly after unlocking 100 characters. They will appear as regular recruits but will look slightly off, and will have worse versions of their attacks. If you upgrade their passives, they will transform into whatever this thing is. Now you're not even safe from your own allies, so keep your eyes peeled. I think that's all of the major things I wanted to cover. There's a few other things like more fan art in the art gallery mission, as well as some balance changes. This game low-key has a little bit of power creep, so I buffed some of the older recruits to match some of the newer ones so they can be more relevant. There are a few things I decided to scrap for this update. One of them is a dispatch system that allows you to send recruits on side missions with a real-time timer while you're playing the game. I wanted this to replace the current worker system since I don't really think it adds much to the game, but I wasn't really sure how to implement it or if it was even that interesting. I might save this concept for Solace Inc 2 or another game in the future. Solace Inc has been a fun game to work on, and I'm glad that it's a cornerstone of my collection of games and the connected universe they take place in. Thank you to all the people that let me use their characters for this game. Hell, I might even need more to eventually get over that 327 mark and get that world record. There's a few characters from games I really wish I could do cameos for, like Sibylla from Pseudo Regalia or Angela from Atlas, or characters from people like Pebbles from Pebbles Quest by Atastic. This is a bit of lost media, but around the time Balacho was gaining traction, I reached out to Local Thunk for a Jimbo cameo, but didn't get a response. I don't imagine that'll be happening anytime soon. Solace Inc 2 development has been a little slow recently, but I'm still working on that. Still trying to decide if I want to release it in early access or not. I definitely want to get multiplayer working again, as well as adding a character creator for custom interns. We'll see. Also, I've gotten this question a few times and wanted to answer it here. I don't have an official Discord server or anything, and don't plan on making one, but if you have any bug reports or anything you want to bring to my attention, you can just DM me on Discord directly. Just don't try to scam me or anything. I'm also cool with people making fan servers for my games, I just don't want to be responsible for it. That's all I wanted to share. Hope you guys enjoyed the new update. It'll be out at the same time this video drops, so feel free to check it out if you're interested. This will probably be my last video for this year, so I guess I'll see you guys in 2026. Also, those like and subscribe buttons have an elemental weakness to your cursor. Just saying. Thank you for watching, and have a merry holiday season. Cheers, lads.